to. Normally, when I teach still, I don't write while people are writing. I want to be available, so I'm present for them. I'm not
Yeah,
in my own
yeah.
space. But I'd worked with this group before, and so I did the exercise. And what came out of me that evening, I guess, way back in March of 1994, a long time ago, um, was the beginnings of a story, a fantasy story.
Oh, is this the start of the Moon
The moon.
Quest?
It is the start of the Moon Quest,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and it was a story I had no conscious desire to write. Remember, the conscious desire is really the key here, because what's going on beneath the surface is what's real, and the conscious stuff is filtered by our fear, right? So I wrote this really wacky scene, because it's fantasy. So to my mind, it was making no sense at all, but I wrote it. Um, and the next morning, something possessed me to keep going at it, and that became the Moon Quest. As I
Wow.
wrote the story, I knew nothing about it except what was happening from one day, from one sentence, from one word some days to the next. And it was
Wow.
an act of total surrender, total lack of control, to let the story, which knew itself, even if I didn't know it, come out. And that's kind of the journey, and it's just gone on. It's just gone on from there.
That's like it's kind of weird with like, such as like the story of like the Moon Quest and like the whole trilogy and everything. How if you really look at it, people in general just all have a journey. You know what I mean? And just add symbolism like on top of that. It's just it creates a greater like level of understanding for that individual as well. And is that like some of the reason why, like for example, you write stories like that? Is just to have people thinking about this kind of stuff in a different way?
Well, you asked the question in a way that suggests that I'm in charge of the process.
Oh, that is true. That
and,
actually, so, and now, all right, now I get it.
and I'm not. With the Moon Quest, there was a story that was inside me that needed to come out, and I didn't consciously know what it was. All I could do was get out of the way and let it happen. And just that has been the story of my life as well. It's people say, well, ask for what you want, and I say, well, what I think I want and what's inside me are not the same thing. What's
Wow.
inside me is huge. What I think I want is tiny.
And
So it's about being available, being open, allowing. I have a memoir that's called Acts of Surrender, because in my life, it's been about surrendering to a higher purpose, however you want to define that. So yes, I mean, the Moon Quest and the books that follow, and the books in that series that follow. It's no longer a trilogy, by the way. I'm writing a fourth book, so it's now a series. It's no longer a trilogy.
oh, seriously? Oh, new insight here. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang.
So, which was a big surprise, because I thought that with the third book it was over, but again, it's what we think and what's real aren't always the same. But the Moon Quest ended up being totally unconsciously a metaphor for my own creative blocks and my own creative opening. Now, I couldn't see that while I was writing it, which is just as well, because I would have really screwed it up. All I could do is allow the story its freedom. And one of the things that I say in several of my books for writers is that the story is smarter than I am. And frankly, it's not only the story I'm writing, it's a story I'm living. And, my description of how I became a writer proves that. I
Absolutely.
did not want to be a writer. I did not believe I had an ounce of creativity in me.
And like for people that's like, I guess, listening right now or watching this podcast episode, I really do believe personally that everybody do have like creative like ideas in their head and are creative in general, because I believe personally that's like we're made to create. Like,
we are absolutely all creative. It doesn't mean we're all writers or we're all musicians, but we're all creative. Some people are creative in the kitchen. Some people are creative in the work, in the wood shop.
Yeah.
Some people are creative in the garden, but we're all creative. And we can all let that out in whatever way it shows up. And, my experience proved that to me, because the block wasn't that I wasn't creative. The block was that I was terrified. I was
That's
terrified of being judged.
it's crazy how, like, and I talk about this a lot on this podcast, on how much fear actually holds us back from who we truly are,
Absolutely.
and what's even more scarier than, thinking that this might go wrong is just like what you've been saying literally this whole time, is just surrendering to an experience. People genuinely just don't like being vulnerable. And in order to do what you've done, you have to be extremely vulnerable.
One of the things that I hope I'm modeling and teaching is vulnerability, because the only way to be authentic is to be vulnerable. There's a line, I think it's in the Moon Quest, where I'm pretty sure it's in the Moon Quest, where the character who is being sent out on this quest very reluctantly, we're all reluctant, he does not want to do this. He does not feel he is capable of doing it, and he's afraid, and he asks his grandmother, who was the elder bard, the chief bard. He asks his grandmother. He says, "What if I fail?" Because of course it's like the fate of the free world rests on his shoulders, right? The whole land depends on his success.
Yeah.
And her answer is, "What if you don't?"